Hi, Peter Coles here again, and as somebody who can speak 25 languages, one of the most common questions I get asked is, well, which languages can you speak and at what level? For a start, I don't really say a level in the languages I can speak. I understand that when I started this social media journey, I may have made a mistake in one interview I did with a girl, and I said, okay, in Russian, I can speak C1. That's probably a little bit too high. I would say around about B2. But of course, you can go and watch that Russian interview on my YouTube page and judge the level for yourself. This video is not about which level I can speak languages or even which languages I can speak, because I will not be releasing the languages I can speak until you watch the language interviews themselves. At this point of filming, I think I've made 8 language videos, different interviews in different languages with native speakers, 20, 30 minutes, unscripted, no green screen, just me and a native speaker talking. And the first 7 got lots of views. As of filming this, I think the Ukrainian interviews are around about 300 views. So the rule is, when a language interview receives 1,000 views, I will make another one. But that's not what this video is about. Today, I'll be discussing the languages that I've ever learned or I can speak and how difficult they were for me to learn. So I was born in the UK and I grew up in the UK for the first 17 years. So of course, I can speak English very well. And during my childhood, I also learned German. So that was very easy. So I could then speak 2 Germanic languages, at least during my teenage years. Now, this video is also not going to be about which order I learned the languages in. I'm thinking of the map in my head, so I'm just going to be going through different languages geographically, not in the order that I learned them. So Dutch, I began learning when I was around about 8. Again, this is another Germanic languages, so it'd be very easy for me to learn. I learned the basics when I was 8. And when I was, 2014, so let's say 22 years old, I moved to the Netherlands and I learned Dutch absolutely fluently in 3 weeks. So if you can speak English and German, learning Dutch will be incredibly easy. French I learned during childhood again, so I can't say how easy or difficult French will be for you to learn. But for me, of course, I was brought up around the French language, so learning French was very easy. It was the first Romance language I learned. And if you speak English, I would say that French isn't too difficult either. One language I had a real passion about when I was a teenager, let's say 11, 12, 13 years old, was Italian. And up until very recently, it's probably the language that I loved the most, let's say. But I didn't find this too difficult either, because I could already speak French and I picked it up and I studied it every day with a passion. And when I moved to Italy. In fact, I learned it before that. When I lived in Austria, I studied Italian intensively. And as an English speaker and somebody who could already speak French, it wasn't so difficult to pick up. If you can already speak one Romance language, Italian is very easy. Now, I haven't said this before necessarily, but at university, I learned 8 languages. And one of those was Spanish. And because I could speak French already and some Italian, Spanish was very easy. And after that, Portuguese is very easy. So if you can already speak Spanish, then Portuguese will be very easy to learn. We're going to move much further into the future now. 2021, as making this video about 5 years ago, I learned Romanian. And Romanian was very easy for me because I could already speak those Romance languages. And also because I had lived in the Czech Republic at that point for about 4 or 5 years. So I could already speak at least one Slavic language. So if you can speak a Slavic language and a Romance language, Romanian is going to be very easy for you. So I don't want to get lost in this video. I want to then go back to those Germanic languages. The first Scandinavian language I learned seriously was Danish. That would also have been about 5 years ago. And because I could speak English, Dutch, and German, Danish was very easy. I also learned a bit of Swedish when I was younger, and because I'm already almost 34 years old, I'm thinking back now. This would have been about 2009, so that makes what? 15, 16 years ago, I first came into contact with Swedish, and because I could already speak English and German, it was very easy to understand. I didn't really learn it seriously at this point, but I could pick it up very easily. If you can speak one Scandinavian language, Swedish will be very easy for you. So if let's say you can speak even English and German, then Swedish will be very easy to learn. So that's how I learned Swedish. And I learned it properly in 2021 after I did Danish. So if you could speak Danish, for example, learning Swedish will be very easy. And once I could speak Danish and Swedish, learning Norwegian was super easy. I'm sure I've mentioned this in a video before, but I once ended up in a Norwegian jail. I've never really been to Norway before. This was the only experience. And the only real time I could use my Norwegian. But the fact I could speak Danish and Swedish meant learning Norwegian was very easy. I think we've gone through all the Romance languages and all the Germanic languages now. I can't speak Icelandic, for example. Sorry. So let's move on to the Slavic languages. So the first Slavic language I ever really learned was Russian. This must have been in 2014 when I moved from Italy to the Netherlands. And I didn't have a job, so I didn't know what I was going to study or what I was going to do. So I took 2 courses. I did one in Dutch, which was far too easy for me. And I did one in Russian just because I felt like it. And I got the basics of Russian, but I didn't really pick it up. I couldn't really use the language. And I didn't move on with this language. I didn't use it too much. And I just basically left it where it was, basic A1. And I didn't learn another Slavic language until I moved to the Czech Republic. Where I live now, I've been here 9 years. And I think it must have been December 2017 when I moved to this country and I started learning Czech from day one. I would say, although I learned Russian first, Czech is the first Slavic language I learned seriously. And 9 years ago, I started learning Czech and I got very fluent in it. Again, I've got an interview in Czech. If you want to check on any of the languages I claim to be able to speak, go to my YouTube page right now and check which ones I've done interviews in, watch them, and when I get to 1,000, I will be doing more. And you can comment if you think I can speak well in Czech or badly in Czech, or whether it's B2 or B1. It's totally up to you. I don't mind. I really appreciate your feedback. But again, I've been speaking Czech for 9 years now, so I think my Czech is pretty good. And afterwards, I was surrounded by Russian, or at least girls from Eastern Europe who spoke Russian. So I started learning Russian seriously about 5 years ago. And I did about 3 years of Russian study. And I reached, let's say, B1 or B2. It's up to you. If you can speak Russian, go onto my Russian video now and judge my level. But I would say upper intermediate level. I speak Russian on a daily basis with my Ukrainian girlfriend. It's the main language I use. So I think I can speak quite good Russian. Now, the next Slavic language I learned was Polish. Because I could already speak Russian and Czech, learning Polish was very easy and I picked it up within about 3 years. I can also speak Slovak, but that's because Slovak is very similar to Czech. It's basically a dialect. A lot of Slovaks won't like that, but Czech and Slovak are basically 2 dialects of each other. And then I moved on to Ukrainian. I took Ukrainian very seriously. And over the last year or 2, I've been learning Ukrainian. The biggest difficulty with Ukrainian has been the fact that I can already speak Russian, and therefore I mix the 2 languages. So we've got to 5 Slavic languages now. Let's move north. Finnish, Estonian, Latvian, and Lithuanian, I can't really speak. I know the basics. Finnish and Estonian, of course, are Uralic languages. And Latvian and then Lithuanian are Baltic languages. I'm not really good at these 2 language groups. My main focus are the Germanic, the Slavic, and the Romance languages. But there is one Uralic language I've really focused on. And for the last 4 years, I've been learning Hungarian. Totally disconnected to other European languages, but I really wanted to give myself a challenge. So I've been learning Hungarian for the last 4 years. It's been very difficult. I would say I'm around A2 or B1. I did an interview in this language a year ago, and I would say I was about A2 back then. I'm now on B1, so I'm a lot better. Let's give me a year or 2 more of Hungarian study, and I might do another interview. If my language interviews get a lot of views, I will be doing a lot more of these so you can see the progress. I may also do interviews before and after, for example, for Ukrainian or Hungarian language that I spoke a year ago at an intermediate level, and I may speak advanced in a year or 2's time. So I may do these interviews again, but I will say Hungarian was very difficult to learn. Although they say, well, it's sort of an intermediate language, it's not easy like French, but it's not hard like Chinese, I would move it into the incredibly hard level because I think the grammar and everything is much more difficult. But we will get onto that later with the very hard languages. I've got to think. So we got other Slavic languages. We've got Slovene, Serbo-Croat. Of course, they say Croat, Bosnian, Serbian, Montenegrin. These are 4 languages. I would agree that they're basically one language. And you also got Bulgarian. So these languages were quite easy for me to get an intermediate level in. I've not really studied them too much with a teacher, but I can hold a basic conversation. So I have a very good friend here in the Czech Republic who is from Slovenia. I can hold a conversation with him. It's good enough. We've already done Romanian, good. Albanian, not really good at. Greek, very basic. We're going to go through them all. Georgian, Armenian, not a very high level. But Turkish is a language that I have studied. I've gone through Turkish from about, back when I was in Holland. So let's say 12 years ago, I started learning Turkish. My Turkish level isn't necessarily that high, let's say around about A2, but I can hold a conversation in it. I did have a Turkish girlfriend back then, and I have taken Turkish courses since then. I did one a year ago, but that teacher obviously quit teaching, so I'm waiting to do it again. I'm totally full up right now. I'm studying Hungarian and Ukrainian and Arabic, so I don't have time to study a language, but Turkish is definitely up there in terms of language that I want to learn. I think we've basically done all the European languages now. Obviously, there are smaller ones that I don't speak. Catalan, I can understand. I can't really speak myself. In terms of German, you've got dialects like Bavarian, Austrian, Swiss, which I can speak, but it depends on your understanding whether these are languages or not. And things like Flemish, of course, I would say I speak Flemish, but many would say, well, that's a Dutch dialect, so who knows? I think we've basically covered all the European languages now. If not, write to me in the comments and I'll get back to you. So let's move over to Asia. Now is April 2026. I did an Arabic course a long time ago. It was an Egyptian Arabic course. Must have been when I was back in Holland, so maybe 2016, and I learned the basics of Arabic. I couldn't really get by in this language. And I started learning Arabic properly 4 months ago. I chose the Khaliji dialect of Arabic because I spend a lot of time in the UAE, and I also intend to spend a lot of time in Saudi and Qatar. So this is the main dialect, although it's not the most important, or at least the most spoken Arabic dialect. I decided with this one. There are other dialects like Iraqi, Levantine, Egyptian, the North African Maghrebi dialect, but I'm mostly focused on Khaliji right now, and I'm able to hold a conversation, pretty good one in Arabic. So give me a few more months, I'll be pretty fluent in this language. So if you get my Ukrainian video up to, let's say, 1,000 views, and we push out, let's say, a Danish one and a Swedish one, I would happily fly out to the Middle East and provide a Arabic interview for you. Other Middle Eastern languages, Hebrew, no. I did a small course in Farsi, can speak a little bit, but I wouldn't say very well. The Asian language I've really focused on when I was at university was Chinese. And I really learned this properly, although there are many people on the internet who can speak really good Chinese. It's one of the hardest languages out there. But I can say I can hold a pretty good conversation in Chinese. At least I can get by. It's now 2026, so 9 years ago now, I went out to live in China for a couple of months, and I lived with a family who couldn't speak any English. I forced myself to only speak Chinese, and I could get by. But I've reached a level that's currently called HSK3. HSK1 is the easiest level. It was HSK6 before, and they moved it up to HSK9, which is the hardest. So I'm now lower intermediate, let's say. Enough to get by, but not good enough. I hope to learn Chinese in the future. I forgot to mention before, when I said Hungarian is more difficult than I thought, I wanted to say that Arabic isn't as hard as I expected. The Khaliji dialect that I'm learning, I would move actually below Hungarian on difficulty, although other dialects might be quite difficult, and the Fusha, which is the standard version of Arabic, is apparently very difficult. I never tried to learn it. That is probably why they say that Arabic is in the top 5 difficult languages, but I would move the spoken Arabic dialect down, at least below Hungarian, below Finnish. But Chinese, again, I've just said, very high on difficulty. Not too much grammar. And yeah, the words are a bit different, but so is it for Arabic and Turkish and Hungarian. Yeah, the words are difficult. I would say that the characters, the writing in Chinese is very difficult. And the tones. So now we're getting on to tones. Tones are a very difficult thing. This also exists in Vietnamese that I can't really speak, but I've lived here in the Czech Republic for 9 years. I've been surrounded by Vietnamese. I can speak the basics of Vietnamese. I've never really studied it. I would like to study the language in the future. And exactly the same thing for Thai. I did a basic Thai course back when I was in Holland. Again, 10 years ago, let's say. Could speak the basics, but I've been to Thailand. Really love this country. Really passionate about it. And I hope in the near future, I can go on to Thai. Although I may be going back to other languages I can already speak well, such as French and Spanish and Portuguese, and getting these up to, let's say, a high B2 or a C1 level. I think these languages are really important to speak at a very high level, so I may prioritize these after Hungarian, Ukrainian, Arabic. Back to Asia. I studied Japanese at university. I think I must have told this story before on social media, how I went into the exam after having been the worst in the class because everybody else in the class was Asian. They said Japanese was the easiest language. So they chose to learn Japanese, and I just couldn't pick up this language because it was so different to what I knew. And when I took the exam, I had 100 questions. Question number 1, easy. Question number 2, easy. 3, I don't know. And after about 5 minutes, I just took my paper, went up to the teacher and said, "Oh, arigato, sayonara," and gave it to him. And everyone thought I passed the exam. No, I failed Japanese, but I have a basic knowledge of this language. Of course, Japanese has 3 writing systems. So you have the Chinese system that I sort of know. You have 2 other alphabets, hiragana and katakana, and you have to learn them. And I just didn't have time. But if I went to Japan right now, I could get by. Exactly the same thing for Korea, by the way. Their writing system is really easy. They've got an alphabet that was invented about 500 years ago. Very easy to understand, and I know enough phrases, enough to get by, but I wouldn't say it's one of my fluent languages. Definitely want to learn Korean in the future. We've basically gone through most of the Asian languages now. Of course, languages like Hindi, Bengali, Urdu, Tamil, the Indian stuff, and the African stuff, not interested in that. There's lots of languages I want to learn. Those are not my focus. The last one I really want to speak about is Indonesian. I went to Indonesia a year and a half ago. I learned enough to get by, and I really like this language. Indonesian is actually one of the easiest languages in the world to learn. Although it's Asian, they don't really have a difficult writing system. They write like we do. They don't have complicated grammar. They have simple vocabulary because they basically invented this language from all the different dialects in Indonesia and Malaysia to create a language that everyone can speak. So I'm very passionate about learning this in the near future. I think that will be easy. I could already speak enough to get by when I go to that country. And the last one will probably be Tagalog of the Philippines. And I might learn this in the near future. It's not a focus because a lot of Filipinos can speak English, but yeah, that's basically all the languages I can speak or can either get by in. I haven't been very specific about the languages for a reason. If you want to hear me speak different languages, please go over to my language interviews, especially if it is your native language or a language that you can speak fluently. Go onto that video and judge it and give your honest feedback. If you think I can speak it well or speak it badly, if you think it's B1 or B2 or whatever, go to that video, give your feedback. I've tried my best. I've never claimed to be able to speak 25 languages at C1 level. I've claimed to be able to hold a conversation in 25 languages, and I will continue to do this. If you keep watching these language interviews, I will keep making them. And if you have any questions about how to learn languages, which language to learn, if you want help finding a teacher, please send me a message. Obviously, messaging me on YouTube is quite difficult, but you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Peter Coles Languages. And if you follow me there and send me a message, I really look forward to your message. And thank you for watching this video. I look forward to making another one soon and getting in contact with you as soon as possible.